hand while I'm pouring it in. And I'm going to keep doing this until basically you can kind of grab all of the dough together so it's moist enough so you can grab it together and it holds. And you don't want to grab too much because you don't want this dough to, you don't want to grab it too much. You're not trying to knead it. You're just trying to collect it together so you can make a disc of dough. I think I'm just going to add just a tiny bit more of my water here. And now I'm going to collect it into a disc of dough. And again, we're not kneading it, we're just kind of collecting it. And we don't want to knead it because we're not making bread here. We're making pie dough, and pie dough is better when it is a little more tender, whereas like with bread, you want the structure that you get from kneading it. Okay, so my dough right now is a tiny bit too wet, and that's like not a catastrophe at all. What you do is when you feel it's a little too wet, meaning it's too wet because I've collected all of the loose flour in the bowl, and it is all folded together, but it's a little too sticky, you know, and that's just something you get to know over time with this. So I'm just going to add in a little flour, and we'll get it a little drier. A little more here. All right. So now I'm getting this disc. Again, I'm just kind of collecting it. I don't need to be a broken record, but collecting it together. And now I'm rolling it between I'm rolling the edge along the bowl here just to get a flat edge. And then I'm making a disc by squeezing it together. That's about an inch thick. So, all right. And the reason why I'm trying to get a flat edge on this is when I roll it out, it'll have a smoother edge after when I roll it out. Okay, so this is pretty much done. This is my disc of dough. Now, normally, if we didn't have a time factor, what you'd want to do now is wrap this in plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator for about an hour. Or you could put it in the refrigerator overnight. But, you know, an hour minimum. You'd wrap this, put it in the refrigerator, and it helps the butter to harden again. And the reason why we want the harder butter is because that creates, when the butter is hard and when it goes in the oven, melts, it creates air pockets. And the air pockets are what create flakiness in the dough. So right now, you would normally wrap this in plastic and put it in your refrigerator for at least an hour. We're not going to do that. We're just going to roll it right out because we want to kind of get this continue this process. Excuse me, I need to get a drink of water too. Okay, and I'm going to put the flour. I'm going to flour the surface that I'm working on here. Just kind of spread the flour like this. Nice, like even coating. It doesn't have to be heavy because you can always add more flour. Okay, so flour. Okay, this is a good starting coat. Now we're going to get our disc. Our disc that just came out of the refrigerator and unwrap it from its plastic. Put it on the on your surface and start rolling it. Now, if at your house you have a surface like a counter that's either like marble or granite, that's kind of the best place to do this type of rolling because, again, you're wanting to keep the butter cool. And a surface like granite or marble will keep the butter cooler for longer. So if you have that in your kitchen, use that. Use your marble surface, okay, or your granite surface, okay. So I'm going to flip it over a few times while I'm doing this. Now, it might be a little harder for you to roll your disc out after you've taken it out of the refrigerator because it'll get a little stiffer. And then I'm recoating, flour so this doesn't stick to the surface. And I'm going to roll this out to it'll be about a 14-inch disc of dough, and to a thickness of maybe, oh, you can't see that, can you? A quarter or an eighth, about an eighth of an inch is what I would like to roll this out to. And you might want to, dust some of the flour under your disc. Oh yeah, see what's going on here is because it's warm in the kitchen here, and my disc is actually, it's melting, my butter's melting a little bit, so that's interesting. We'll see what we can do. We had to turn the fans off in the kitchen because of the noise they create, and we found that we weren't able to hear. It's okay. I'm probably not going to roll this as thin as I normally would, just because it's melting a bit. The butter's melting, and it's going to be hard to get it off of the surface that I'm working on. So this is a little smaller than I would normally do because, like I just said, I don't want to overstretch it in this kind of warm kitchen. Thank you. Just because for some air in here, it's getting kind of warm. Okay, and so let's try this. Normally, this is how I do it, but yikes, it broke. All right. Normally, what I do is I fold it over into a. Oh my gosh. Okay, we didn't take into account the warming kitchen. Let's see. So we're going to do this. Get this off the surface. Normally, this is not a problem if your dough is cold and your kitchen is moderately cool, but this is a little bit of a different thing, and it's an experiment for us in this situation. So let's see if I roll it around the rolling pin. So normally, I'll fold it over in half and then fold it. Yeah, normally I would fold it over in half and then in a quarter and then put it on the, oh boy, I'm having a lot of trouble. All right, so we're gonna see how we get this on the pan. Oh, yikes. All right, everyone, this usually doesn't happen, but this is what happens when you don't refrigerate your dough ball. Oh, man. So, oh boy, I should have brought a refrigerated dough ball with me and not used the one that I was demonstrating. Oh well, we're learning as we do. So, all right. So So I'm gonna like put this on the, oh man, this is really, yikes. Oh, okay. So, God, this is really funny. What I should have done, I realized, is had given you a demonstration like I just did, but then had a refrigerated ball of dough in the refrigerator and rolled that out instead of the one I was demonstrating on. But let's see what we can do with this. It's just gonna slow the process down a little bit. Right. I'm not a professional baker, I'm a homemaker, so obviously this is like, all right, so I have it on parchment line, my parchment line baking sheet, and what I think I'm just gonna try and do is roll this out here and try and patch it up a little bit. So, luckily, I baked one yesterday, and I'll show you the one I baked yesterday because it looks really good. I baked it at home as like just to kind of do a run through and try the nectarines and all that stuff. But let's see. Okay, so I patched it up some. Here's some cracks. You know, it'll be okay ultimately. You know, it won't be as pretty as they normally are, but I'll show you the pretty one that I baked yesterday. And then, who knows, we might see this one too. So, this is a good example of how to like repair a disaster. So what I'm going to do is I'm just trying to like get some of the dough, patch some of the cracks in the dough. Sometimes it helps if you have a little bit, like a little cup of water, which I actually do. So if you're doing it with a refrigerated dough, a dough that's refrigerated, it'll be harder to repair it with, you'll really need the water and maybe a little bit of a flour to repair it. Where this one's so soft, I'm able to repair it just the way it is. So, okay, so let's pretend that this is like a perfect piece of dough. And the next step is putting the frangipani on the dough. So so this is your frangipani. I would start with like 2 tablespoons. And then you can spread it over your dough. If you've made your frangipani in advance, which I mean, I assume you would have, and it's been in the refrigerator, you want to pull the frangipani out of the refrigerator about a half hour before you need it, because it'll harden and that makes it harder to spread. So when it's soft, it's super easy to spread because, you know, it's almond paste and butter basically. So let's spread it. I do some with the spoon, and then I also use my fingers because it seems to be, I always find that I can spread it best with my fingers. So, it's funny, when we made the galette at the holidays in the apple galette in November, I'm wondering, I don't recall if I brought an extra disc of dough, but I know that this wasn't an issue of it kind of melting and cracking the butter. So I may have brought an extra disc of dough, you know, and done that. So I need to do a little patch here. All right, so here I'm spreading this out. Still spreading the frangipani. And you want to spread it to about 1.5 inches, you know, of the border of the edge of the galette. You don't want to spread it all the way to the edge of the galette. Just there, yeah, keep like a border of 1.5 inches. All right, so now we've got, it's hard to see just because the colors, there's not a lot of variation in color because they're, you know, both have a soft yellow color, the actual galette dough and the frangipani, but there's about a border of about 1.5 inches around the edge. Okay, so now is the exciting part. We get to use the fruit. So I already cut this up earlier, and the way I cut this is, oh, I don't know if you saw that actually. I cut this fruit up earlier. Here it is, just to have it ready. But I just want to show you the way I cut the nectarine was I kind of went down the side like this. Let's see, vertically, you know, halfway around it vertically. Every now and then they'll come apart like this one just did, which is great. So this makes it a little easier to demonstrate. So now you've got the half of the nectarine, and then I just started slicing like this around the pit of the nectarine. And then sometimes they come away easily, other times they don't come away so easily. I just pulled that off the pit like that. So continue doing a little bit of that. I need to be centered. So yeah, just cutting like this. And for some reason, when you cut down the center, you know, when it was whole, if you cut down the center of the nectarine and it didn't, you know, it didn't break in half like mine did, you could still do this. You know, you're just dealing with the whole nectarine instead of a half of nectarine. So, okay, so that's just, I'll continue working with this half here. I'm also thinking it could have been cooler in the kitchen when we did that demonstration here. I'm wondering if we did that on a Saturday or something, and so the kitchen maybe wasn't as warm, you know. So, you know, well, this is a good challenging experience for a baker.
So Joel, some people in the chat were saying they really appreciate seeing you work with the dough and patch it, and they're learning a lot from this.
Good. So there's a purpose to this.
Right.
Okay, so we've got this half of the nectarine cut up. Yeah, so with these nectarines, they're not like freestone peaches where when you cut the flesh off, it doesn't necessarily come away super easily from the pit. But you know, it doesn't matter that much because it doesn't matter that much because the way the pattern we're going to do is like this. I'll just start doing it now. We're going to do like what I call a fan pattern. I'm not exactly sure if that's what this is called, but that's what I call it. And on this first, you're going to kind of do an outer rim of them, like an outer ring, I should say, and then an inner ring. So first, actually, I forgot one step here. I do kind of a border. So I'll just do a border of nectarines like this. Nectarine slices. And these ones that are the border are actually going to mostly be under the edge of the galette. So just for any of you following along, sorry, I kind of haven't acknowledged that there are some people following along here. If you're following along with me, just with your dough, hopefully you're having a little more success. Your kitchen's probably not as hot as the JSei kitchen is at the moment. So we're doing this. Just do this ring around the edge. And of your slices, if you kind of look at your slices and you go, oh, there's some larger ones and smaller ones, use your larger ones for this outer ring, for this border ring anyway. And then also for the first ring inside fan, you're also going to want to use maybe your larger slices if you can kind of tell the difference. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell the difference. Like maybe there were some smaller nectarines and some larger nectarines. Now we're going to start doing the kind of fanning of the slices. So we're going to just do this all the way around. One outer ring and then one inner ring.
So Joel, is this similar to how you lay out the apples? I didn't get to see your apple demo.
When I did the apples, I did it more of a flower pattern. So they were kind of laid out more like this. See the way the outer ring is? I just kept bringing, I'm demonstrating. So I just kept bringing them in like this on the apple galette. You know, so actually when it was done, it kind of looks like a big rose.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of doing that, this time we're doing them like this. Like kind of what I'm calling the fan pattern. All right. Okay, if you see me picking through these slices, you can't really, they're off the screen a bit. So I'm kind of picking through the slices I have here, and yeah, trying to see, well, which are the larger ones and which are the smaller
ones. So would now be a time, does anyone have any questions for Joel? You can unmute yourself.
Why did you do the apples in the concentric circles and this one you're doing diagonal? Just for variety?
Variety. Yeah, and plus the apple slices, you know, these are kind of thinner, and the apple slices are a bit lighter, so you have a little more flexibility with them because these are so thin. Because you know the distance between the pit and the outer ring of the nectarine is kind of narrow. You're trying to hide, at least I'm trying to hide, the imperfect inner part right here. And doing this right next to each other kind of does that. Whereas the apples are thicker, the apple slices, and you don't have to hide quite as much. So it's strategic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I have a question.
Yes.
So how far did you grind the oats? Did you grind it all the way down to a flour?
You know, I sometimes grind it a little more than others. This time it was ground a little finer, so it was more like flour mixed with like grains of sand, let's say. That's what it looked like.
Okay.
Sometimes I leave it more towards the grain of sand kind of level. So.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Joel. I have a question.
Laura?
Yeah. If I wanted to combine two different fruits, like added blueberries and nectarines, how would you place, that second fruit? Or maybe some cherries or something.
Yeah, you know, often what I do, instead of doing this pattern, I just
Uh-huh.
like mix them together, then like nectarines or peaches or apricots, and you know, cherries cut in half, or blueberries. What I'll do is I'll kind of mix them together in a salad bowl with sugar and maybe a little bit of cornstarch, or the that tapioca, that instant Kraft instant tapioca. I'll mix them together in a salad bowl, and then I'll just kind of dump them on the pastry, and it makes for it's a much more rustic look.
Oh, okay.
It's also really pretty in its own way. You could always just try and place a few blueberries strategically on top of a pattern like this. But it seems like
Okay.
a pattern like this, it's almost not worth. You know, part of the beauty of this is just the pattern itself, and it doesn't
Right.
have extra decoration. So I would just, like, if I were mixing fruits,
Uh-huh.
you could do this pattern with peaches and nectarines together, but fitting the berries in, I would just probably do the one that's mixed up, like a fruit salad, like
Mhm.
like there's the nectarines and the blueberries mixed up, and then just put on here, and then you
Okay.
mix around. So
So do you add like the cornstarch or the tapioca because the berries have more liquid? Is that why you need
yeah,
that?
and plus when you pile them up like that, um, you're often, and I generally, when I do that pile like fruit salad type thing, I'm
Uh-huh.
using more fruit, and so there'll be more liquid because you're
Oh,
putting
I see. Okay. Okay.
more liquid.
Okay. Yeah. It looks great, Joel.
Thanks, Laura. This is so funny.
Joel was missing his baking buddies, so he's glad that you're here, Laura and Fuzzy.
Laura, Richard, I know you're there, and Argo, or at least I was sure that you would be there. So it's really cool that thank you for showing up and seeing what you've already seen once before. But anyway, the difference is the frangipani this time. And if we do a holiday baking thing, I have another idea for a different type of savory, not a galette, a savory, a different savory pastry. So let's see. Okay. Oh, so I'm now doing the inner ring, and I'm doing the fanning in a different direction. So instead of going this way, I'm now going this way with the fanning of the fruit, and that's something you can do, or you can keep both rings the same direction. So, okay, I'm just gonna cut some of my fruit here, which I cut earlier today, has gotten a little soggy. So I'm gonna maybe cut a few more pieces from the fruit that I have, or from the uncut fruit is what I mean. So, okay. These are really, so I tried, when I did the demonstration galette, which you're going to see in a little while, the one I did yesterday, or the practice demonstration galette, I was tasting some of these slices of the nectarine, and I'll tell you, they are the sweetest ones I've had this year. Matsumoto just is like, they have really wonderful fruit. So they're sweet and they're organic, which of course is wonderful. Okay, look, voila, it's pretty much done. So all I do now is I add a 1/4 cup sugar. So here's my sugar. And I've got my 1/4 cup measure. This is the 1/4. Yes, the 1/4. All right, and so just kind of do this. Okay, that looks good. That's enough sugar. Now, we're going to try, let's see. I have an egg wash here. This will be the step after we roll the edge of the dough over. This is an egg wash. So what it is 1 egg beaten with 1 tablespoon of water. So let's see how this goes. Okay. Oh, one more thing, sorry. What I've been doing lately is just making little cuts in the dough, and that'll be where I fold the dough over. So every, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches, I'm making a little cut. And I cut just beyond the edge of just before the edge of the fruit. And that way, it makes it a little easier to fold over the edges of the galette. So, there I go like this. When this isn't soft and melty, the dough, it has more body, so it becomes it's a little easier to work with. Now it's really soft because it's melted some. I'm just reminding you that's kind of what's going on here. And I'm just folding it over the edge of the fruit. Let's see here. Sorry, this is in the way. All right, so now it's pretty much together. But I'll just check the edges a little bit because to try and avoid leaks of the frangipani, I just am trying to seal a little bit the edges if there were some cracks. And the frangipani might leak out anyway. It sometimes does, even though you try your best. It's not a big disaster. Some of the frangipani will leak out, but it'll still have that nice kind of almond flavor. So, and next, we're going to use the egg wash. Just on the edge here. Okay, and just kind of cover the edge with the egg. And then on top of the egg, I'm going to use about a tablespoon of turbinado sugar. Put it on top of the egg wash on the edge of the crust. Okay, let's see, turbinado sugar. It's right here. Okay, this is I measured a tablespoon of turbinado sugar earlier into this spoon. Oh, funny, it's right. Okay, there. And just kind of like shake it onto the edge of the galette. And this will give like kind of a nice caramelized look to the edge of the galette. If you don't use the turbinado sugar, it'll just be more of a lighter edge. But sometimes this is nice. That's a little more sweetness, and then that nice kind of caramelized look on the edge. So now, actually, it's really ready to go into the oven. So we're going to put this in the oven here. I have the oven preheated to 400 degrees. I preheated it. I probably turned it on actually just before 2 o'clock before we started. So it'll be nicely well heated. It's always good, a lot of you I'm sure know this already, but to preheat your oven. And like my oven has a little beep that says when it's preheated, but that's only after about 10 minutes. And I would just give it another 10 minutes, like for my home oven. even though it's an electronic one, and it beeps when it says it's preheated to 400 degrees. I never put anything in right when it beeps. I give it always like 20 minutes. Sometimes like I'll give it a half hour and 45 minutes, just because I turn it on to heat up when I'm starting to put this together, and then by the time I'm ready to put it in the oven, it's like 45 minutes later, and it's nice and hot. Anyway, I'm going to put this in the oven right now. I think Jill has some information or questions.
Yeah, so we're going to take some questions, but I wanted to check on our bakers. So let's see what they're doing. Carol, how are you doing?
Oops. Awesome. I just put mine galette in the oven, and I didn't know about, I preheated the oven like right when we started, so I'm sure my oven's fine. But I did not catch how long did he say to put it in?
I think he's going to check it at 15, change the position.
Oh, check it.
So, sorry about that. Yeah, you check it. What I do is normally at home I put it in for 30 or 35 minutes. I check it though at about 15 minutes, 17 minutes. I'm going to set a timer on my phone right now for like 16 minutes from now, just so I don't get distracted.
Okay.
Let's see, 16 minutes. Okay, so I've got my timer on my phone, so in 16 minutes I will get a warning that I need to turn it around halfway. So, yeah, and then I will cook it another, normally at home I cook it another 2 minutes. This JSei oven might be a little hotter than my oven, so I'm going to check it, like, after I turn it around halfway, I'll set my timer for like 10 minutes more, just because I think I recall this oven being a bit hotter than mine at home, even though you set it to 400 degrees, you think it should be 400 degrees, but like most people know, everyone's oven has kind of its own idiosyncrasies. So,
Great, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, that's cool that you're making it at home right now.
Okay, we're going to check on Amy. It looked like she put something in the oven.
Yeah, I just got mine in the oven. So what slowed me down was cutting my nectarines, getting it off the pit.
Oh yeah.
So yours kind of, I don't know, maybe you're stronger than I am. So I just cut it off the pit.
Yeah, no, some of mine came off easily of the different ingredients I used, and some were more difficult and they didn't come off. Like you got, I don't know if you can you see me right now?
Let's see.
Anyway, so what? Oh, here I am. There, I think you might be able to see me. So some of the ones came off looking really ragged. But because you're fanning them, you can sometimes kind of hide that. So,
That's my hope.
No, but good for you who are like baking along. That's hard because I like trying to work somewhat fast because you're all sitting there.
Do we have any other bakers? Florence, were you baking? No? Let's see.
I'm baking too.
Okay, Mary, where are you?
Oh,
You don't have a camera.
oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually made 2 little ones instead of 1 big one.
Okay. So what size?
Hi.
Oh, you're muted, Mary.
That's Mary.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Yeah, I just divided evenly into 2, and it came out to be about 6 inches each, just so I can give my neighbor a piece. I mean, a whole one. And then I actually finished. I started a little earlier.
Yeah.
And it's kind of warm here too. So after I shaped it and and arranged it and what have you. I stuck it in the fridge for about half an hour
Yeah.
while the oven was heating. And that's my 20-minute alarm. And then I waited. It was cold enough. Then I yeah. So hopefully, it's not quite ready yet. It's 20 minutes, so probably another 10 minutes. But they're smaller, so I gotta really watch it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been baking along. That's great. Good for you.
What's that?
You've been baking along with us. I mean, some of it you've been doing at the same time while we're doing it.
Yeah, I kind of started a little earlier. Yeah, because you know, I know that I think Fuzzy told me that cutting the nectarines took a long time.
Yeah.
So I did all that in advance, and I did the dough this morning, stuck it in the fridge, and then waited a while for it to warm up. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still kind of just still figuring it out. So, like in the future, in your instructions, we might send, do this in advance. You know, make the frangipani in advance.
Yeah.
We might have said
Yeah.
that, but
Right.
we might also say cut the nectarines in advance, just because we're
Right.
still figuring out kind of like. I mean, I figure how this will happen. You know, over time.
Right.
I'm not baking because I'm too chicken, but I have a question. So if we end up, so I'm terrified of trying to make a pie crust because I tried once and it was like a cookie, like I could lift the whole thing up. It was terrible. So I'm gonna try this. I know it's not exactly pie crust, but so the colder the better. Is that basically, so if we feel like it's getting sticky or our kitchen is warm, like would you recommend how Mary just said she put the whole thing in the fridge before baking it?
Definitely.
Okay.
The colder you keep it, the better. Not only for the handling, but also for the finished product. The butter, when it hardens, the butter, you know, from the cold, I said this earlier, but it'll create, the butter harden. It's better, you know, it's better to keep the butter cold and hardened in the pastry. So when it melts in the oven, it'll create air pockets, and those air pockets are flakiness, what we perceive as flakiness. So that's
Great.
yeah.
Thank you.
The more you can keep it cool, better. Once the butter melts in the dough, like if it melts too much, even if you put it back in the refrigerator, it may not, it's better than not putting it back in the refrigerator, but it may not be quite as flaky as if you were able to keep it cool all along. You know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anya.
Hey, Fuzzy, so did you already bake?
Anya.
Yeah, I already did. I had some time this morning, so I did it. And yeah, I finished it. I didn't have the problems Eric had with his dough because I made my dough last night.
Oh, good.
So it worked out well. The only problem I had was cutting the fruit. And so then I decided what I would do is I just sliced circles for part of it, and then the other part you get a half a circle.
Yeah.
And then the last part, you just get little fragments, but it all worked out.
Richard, do you usually do, I mean, I know you do a lot of cakes. Do you usually do stuff with like a pastry like this?
Well, I just started doing puff pastry.
Oh.
You know, croissants. And in fact, yesterday I made apple tarts. I mean, apple turnovers.
That's great. Earlier, like I think it was in May, I made some, you know, Queen Amans, which are basically croissant dough.
Yeah.
So I made some Queen Amans, and I hadn't done any for a few years, and I just was like, you know, we all have, you know, a lot of time on our hands, you know, or not all of us, but sometimes we have a lot of time on our hands these days. So I was like, this is a good project. It takes like 24 hours from start to finish. So I finally did it again after like 5 years of not doing it. So.
Do we have other questions for Joel before he has to go back and check on his bake?
Jill, are you going to post the recording?
You could talk.
I had one question.
Yes.
If I use peaches instead of nectarines, I know they're not as juicy as the nectarines. Is there any differences in proportions or anything?
No. I mean, if your peaches are really large, like some of these nectarines are, well, some of the ones I used are kind of like average to small. You know, sometimes you buy peaches and nectarines that are just like enormous. They're like, you know, they're like maybe this big, you know, as opposed to, you know, this much bigger. Yeah, it really, the amount of fruit you use depends on the size of the fruit.
Okay.
Let's say these are pretty average nectarines, average to small. Most of the ones that I've seen anyway from Masumoto. So, you know, when I said 5 to 6, I think is what I recommended. I actually think it could have gone in the recipe as 3 to 4. And I'm not sure if we corrected it's actually because these are smallish. I said 5 to 6. And what I ended up using in my demonstration, the one that you're going to see that I baked yesterday, is I used 4.5 of these, so almost 5. And then in today's, let's see, in today's I also used, because I pulled out 6, so I also used 4.5 again. So this would be number 5, and this one's number 6. So I did 4.5 in today's, of these small ones. So yeah, if you're using peaches, if they're large peaches, you may only need 3.
Okay.
Buy extra though, buy extra because you don't want to be short.
I have a question. I have never used frangipane, if I'm pronouncing it right, before. What else can you use that for, since the recipe's more than you need?
Good question. Because when I make that recipe, I put it in the refrigerator, or you can put it in the freezer, and I use it for galettes like all summer long. Like this is probably like the 3rd time I've made that recipe. Let's say April, because once the stone fruit starts coming in, I use it like for all my galettes. Gosh, what did Alice Waters say? Let's see. This was from her book. So let's see if she recommends it. I think she's pretty much in this case only recommending it for, she's only recommending it really in this case for, you know, stone fruit galettes. But no, it would seem like if you were to do cinnamon rolls or something, you could actually spread that on the dough and then put the cinnamon, although you may not taste the frangipane that much. So yeah, sorry I don't have any more ideas at the moment, but you know, search that online, and I'm sure there's ideas online.
Okay, thanks.
Other reasons, and like I said, you can freeze this so you can keep it for a year or 2, or excuse me, 6 months or so, you know, frozen.
So Joel, there's a question from Florence. She asked if you generally use vinegar in your pie crust.
Generally, in this one I do. This particular one, it calls for it, so I do use it. Normally, you know, in like a regular pie crust, I wouldn't. You know, it's just this particular recipe. I'm not exactly sure what the effect is of vinegar. I know some people use vodka in their pie crust, and I thought it was to make it like softer or something, or more flaky, but I'm not exactly sure. You know what? I need to go check the galette, so I'll be back in just a second.
Okay. So actually at this time, we wanted to share this video of Masumoto and Nikiko Masumoto, and they are our source of the generous donation of nectarines. And just to explain to everyone kind of how this donation came to be, JSei collaborated with People's Kitchen Collective 2 years ago, and we helped to connect Japanese American seniors with the community to share their stories. And what the People's Kitchen Collective, what they do is they use food and stories to build community and to raise awareness around issues of justice and equity. And so it's really a wonderful way of sharing with them. And we'll share more of their work in collaboration at a future time. But what they're planning for is they've been hosting a Malcolm X free breakfast in Oakland for the past several years. And they use a street in Oakland, and they join tables. There's a one very, very long, but just one table. So they put 6-foot tables all up and down the street, and they invite the neighborhood and friends to come and join them. And they have conversations across the table, and they share food. So it's really a wonderful interactive way of engaging with others. And so they received the donation from Masumoto Farms the past couple of years. And what they do is they make jam, fresh jam from the peaches or nectarines. And they also make biscuits and frittatas, and everything is made with organic ingredients and really beautifully laid out. And so they'll be sharing that. Right now they peeled and sliced the nectarines and are freezing them. And then I think their breakfast is maybe in February or January, I can't remember. So those will then be utilized for jams. So I'm going to share my screen, and I hope this will work. It's only 15 minutes, but it's a good time to kind of hear the story of the Masumoto family farm.